Pandæmonium Asphodelos Savage is complete. My sleep schedule is absolutely destroyed. My apartment is a complete mess, and I'm ready to talk about the first raid tier of Endwalker. Good morning, gamers. If you're just here to see specific thoughts on specific fights, I'll have timestamps available for you so you can just kind of jump around and look at whatever you want. But if you want to hang out with me and hear me go on random tangents, then I would love to have you hang out. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Tyci. I'm a melee button presser in Final Fantasy XIV who started playing at the end of Eden's Gate. This was my team's first time trying world progression, and I'm pretty happy with where we ended up. We ended up finishing Crystal first. I think world top 30 somewhere. I don't think the rankings have kind of settled in yet, and yeah, I'm happy. I just want to talk about my thoughts on each fight and some of the strategies and ideas that we were doing during progression, because I have my comms muted during streams. I know a couple people were saying like, hey, I watched your stream for a couple hours, it started getting dry because I couldn't listen to comms, etc. So I wanted to go through it, talk about what we were talking about, talk about the strategies we were trying to come up with, and put it out in a video. So P4S, aka Eric, aka Chain Dude, was a pretty decent first fight. I think it wasn't nearly as enjoyable for me as like something like Ramu as a first fight from E5S, but you know, it's the first raid tier of the expansion. It's the first fight to kind of let you see what to expect for the rest of the raids, and I enjoyed it. In a progression setting, it was really easy to figure out. We didn't even have to really set up mechanics to greed things. We kind of respected just everything. You can see here with the Warden's Wrath raid AoE, we start to spread out for the chain mechanic that's going to come out here in a second. So we basically just sent the red tether or the red chain south and had the purple chains kind of sit in the middle. You know, easy mechanic. We could have resolved it better later in the phase 3. And then the dynamo and chariot mechanic. This was actually something I was very impressed with. I really appreciate that they allow us to sit max melee range, step in for the dynamo, never lose uptime as a melee player. That is always enjoyable, and I hope they continue to implement things like that in future raids and expansions, because yeah, it's nice. So the first mechanic I want to talk about was actually this chain mechanic that's coming up right here. You know, chain on one side, chain on the other side, really showing you like, hey, you know, I'm gonna hit the right side first, then I'll hit the left side, dodge through. You know, the difference from normal being now it's a cone safe space rather than like half room safe space kind of thing. I thought this was very well implemented, and I think, you know, in parallel with the earlier mechanic of the dynamo and the chariot that we saw, it was very hinting of Square, I think, in a way, trying to tell us as players, you're going to have to look at his hands quite often. And this was something that I personally had no idea was going on, especially during this mechanic here, where, you know, he's in this situation exactly, he's, you know, pressing down. He's showing you, hey, I'm going to hit the bottom ice and fire elements first. And if it was, you know, if his hand was up, he was going to hit the ice ones or the top ice and fire first. So I had no idea that was going to happen. We just kind of went with it and did it on the fly, and yeah. But speaking more about this temperament, torment mechanic, or whatever it's called, I think that this mechanic was handled relatively simply. I saw a lot of things going around on like Twitter and Discord servers of like how to solve this, with like people rotating all over the place, and we kind of just like spread out into 8 separate squares, had everyone take one square. If you needed to swap, you would go to after you took the first hit, you would either go north or south, and if you had lightning in your middle spot, you would just go to the center. Like you can see Azza, Arya, and Gwil. And you know, I have to swap, so I take south, and then the tanks would take north. And then we just go back to the other square to resolve it. Maybe I was overthinking some of the diagrams that I saw, but I feel like people are overcomplicating this a bit too much. Or maybe we were just doing this completely wrong, because I do remember there were times during progression where our tanks were just eating damage down. And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't know what happened, but sure. You'll learn very quickly that I do not really remember P1S or P2S very well because most of our time was spent in P3 and P4S. So let's skip forward and talk about, yeah, the Shining Cells mechanic. So we had predicted in normal, because we kind of did some speed runs of this fight for fun because we were using them for practice, but we predicted in normal that we were going to have like a protein, because you can see the, you know, these are pretty well spaced out cones, four cones on each side, 8 players, full party. It just made too much sense. I don't think we ended up actually seeing a cone mechanic in this phase, but what we did see was another thing that we predicted, and that was the Dynamo and Chariot, because we were like this, you know, his hitbox is massive, the chain's just outside, you have the elements on the outside, you can still hit him from max melee. And I'm so happy that they implemented this mechanic the way that they did, because I think it is just, I don't know, I think it was a really cool first boss, you know. Hey, we built up this mechanic in phase 1, we're gonna add it into phase 2. Let's see what you can do about it. And I enjoyed that a lot. And you know, you have the same thing here. You have the same tank buster from phase 1. You're gonna have a very similar chain thing going on here, except in phase 1 I think it's strictly like Dynamo into Chariot or Chariot into Dynamo, and you can see here now it's, you know, left cleave into Chariot while we're doing fire, so we have to go to the ice or light or whatever you want to call this spot. I think that this phase was very enjoyable, very cool. It's pretty simple, but I mean, it's the first boss of the tier, and I'm a DPS player. I like just punching target dummies because so exiting this phase is actually where we really were kind of overthinking this next mechanic, fourfold shackles or shambles or whatever it said. You know, we were just kind of full safety gamering this. I mean, we're blind here. We don't want to try to overcomplicate things. We're like, okay, screw the melee uptime. You get an orange, you're going to the corners. Purples will just form like a box in the hitbox. Please do not do this. This is a terrible strategy. It was just kind of what we were working with, just trying to get through it quickly without wasting time optimizing, essentially. Because if this mechanic had played out the way that I thought it was going to play out, or the way that I think most of our group had thought it was going to play out, this would have been a bit more complicated than just like, you get purple, form a diamond in the center of the hitbox. If you get orange, form a square on the outside of the hitbox, max melee range. Like, that was a bit underwhelming, but I can't complain because it was fine. Like, the animations are cool, I guess, but I don't know. So then we see Intemperate Torment again. But this time now we have a Dynamo and Chariot involved, so an in-out mechanic kind of going on. We handled this the exact same way. You know, you take your bottom element, everyone steps in if they have a lightning as their second thing. If not, they're going north-south to switch their colors. After that, we had everyone either step in or out depending on what we had saw from his little chains. So in this situation, we had an in, then out. So the order of operations would have been in, then out, then your crystal. And I think that this was just cool. I appreciated this. You know, still max melee, still keeping up time on the boss, still resolving the mechanic. Tanks have damage downs. I don't want to talk about it, but I think we handled this fight pretty well. And you know, it was a good first fight. I enjoyed it. I think speeding it will just kind of be a target dummy, but in a prog setting, it was an okay first fight. Moving on to P2S, aka Hippo, aka I don't know, dog thing. This fight was a step up from P1, but it was still relatively easy, I believe. I don't know how this will be in Party Finder. I know that one of my first reactions to doing this was like, I do not want to do this in a Party Finder setting, but after thinking on it a bit more, I don't think it'd be too bad once some strategies are standardized. So this was actually quite a bit different from normal than I thought it was going to be. You know, you see they start blocking off sections of the map, so you can't rotate that way. And the way we dealt with that was we're gonna go opposite of the bad stuff. So bad on D, we go to B. And this was also an interesting mechanic that was added to Savage, you know, the wing cataract or whatever, where he kind of does a fake or fake frontal and you have a safe spot here. That was also pretty interesting. So the way that we had called that out in voice chat was spoken is true, aka spoken is how he does the mechanic in normal, where the body is just a line, the head is a half frontal, and then winged we called fake. That's just what made made sense in our group, and we would have someone call a safe spot. It worked out pretty well, I think. So coherence, this is like the same kind of tank buster flare thing that we saw in normal, except now you have a tether, which I'm sure Apollo and Leon were very happy about having to deal with all the tank buster tethers in this tier. That is complete sarcasm, by the way. But we just kind of handled it the same way we did in normal, you know, tanks far, yes, far. It was nothing really too special. So ominous bubbling, this was the prelude to the shockwave, yeah, the leap here. Basically we just had all our tanks in melee arm's length this shockwave. They soak it all together as a light party. Heals in range soak it in the back. And I think a few of them might have surecast or something. I'm not actually sure because it didn't look like they moved, but that was how we resolved it. It was pretty simple. Nothing really special going on there. And again, here you can see the spoken cataract. This was where we would call true because this is how it hacks in normal. We run to C, then we run. Oh, right. So this was actually something that I, you know, forgot that even happened in P4S because that fight is a blur to me. So you have two people who have an AoE debuff. It's always one tank and one DPS, I believe. And so what we would end up doing was, while we're running away from the true or fake mechanic, we would call a location. The tank would call, hey, I'm going left. And it's like, okay, well, I'm DPS, I'm going right. I have the debuff. So we would spread out, take them to the bad side over there and as far away basically as the DPS over there, while the DPS and healer group and the remaining tank resolved the stack mechanic. You know, pretty easy mechanic, nothing really too complicated going on there. I thought it was fine. This we referred to as Emerald Weapon. I have never actually done Emerald Weapon Savage, I don't believe. This was actually kind of funny because when we saw this go out, we were like, this is going to act like the, I think, O11S fists, right? Like you have the tether to the fists, you have to like offset them so, you know, they don't hit each other. So you don't want to hit someone else with your arrow. But it actually ended up, ended up being, you got to push into each other, which I think was maybe something that I had said like, hey, why don't we just slam into each other? And then we started playing around with distances and we were like, okay, like let's just get through this fight. Like we don't need to greed this. Let's just, you know, go to the outside of, or the edges of these squares, hit each other in the middle, resolve it. This isn't a tight DPS check. We'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, it was a fine mechanic. I'm interested to see what kind of like uptime strategies come out of that. I don't think it's going to be too complicated, but hopefully there's not a bad strat that gets implemented into Party Finder. And then you have a raid wide followed by the shockwave into the, I don't even know what the mechanic's called, but the triangle and square thing. So we actually had one of our ninths had this amazing idea of like, okay, we're just going to throw people on numbers. If you have a number on your over your head, then it's, I think, purple. You don't have a number, you're going to go opposite of each other, you pivoting off of that little like dead space over there. So in this situation, I have one square, I'm going far. 3 will also be with me. I actually have no idea what people were doing to solve this mechanic or what they're doing right now in Party Finder, but we basically just put all the numbers on the all the purple triangles on their respective number because it was just brain dead easy. We had the person taking the 1 square step forward because the body is a dash and not a leap like the purples are. So, you know, 1 square steps forward, he takes the dash while the 3 is in the back and doesn't get hit. Now you have physical vuln up. You step back, let 3 step forward while the boss dashes and hits the 2 square. Then he'll come back and hit the 3 square. He's going to go back and hit the 4 square, and you just kind of keep rotating in and out. I thought that the strat our 9th came up with was amazing, and it worked out really well. The biggest thing to look out for here were the triangle numbered people. They kind of had to pay attention to where the squares were in a way. Like, so our two number here, Arya and Leon, I think is 3. Yeah, so they have to know, okay, 1 is about to go out. So I cannot be in this general vicinity because I will get hit by the dash. So they kind of had to stand like on the outer edge or whatever this little box is to avoid the dash. But I mean, it wasn't too complicated. I enjoyed this. The only part that's not real fun about this is just the downtime. Double impact, tank busters, same thing we saw in normal. Me casting an Ogi that probably doesn't crit or direct hit. Yep, same thing that we saw in normal. That's pretty average as well. And then the same Murky Depths raid wide that still hits pretty hard, but not quite as hard as like Sewage, Deluge, or whatever that one AoE mechanic is called. Okay, so here we have another channeling overflow. You know, we were calling this Emerald Weapon. I'm still probably forever going to refer to this as Emerald Weapon because I'm terrible at remembering mechanic names. This one we handled a bit different. I don't even know if we did it right in this VOD, but basically when you're assigned your number, I think you're assigned like 13. There's like a teen-ish number, low teens number, and then like a high 20 or low 20s number. So if you're a low 20s number, you were supposed to go to the dead area opposite of your partner. So in this situation, Noya is my partner. I'm here. Arya's partner is Apollo over there. And we're going to deal with the spread mechanic while the other lower timer debuff groups deal with their push mechanic. I think this was a relatively easy way to deal with things. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. This was just kind of what we came up with and how we ended up resolving it. You know, yeah, there's probably a better way to do this. I'm losing downtime or losing uptime here, so I'm sure we'll revisit this and do it another way. Apollo just eats the water like a champion. But you know, that's what you do during Prog. You're safety gaming, you're just trying to get a kill, you don't care about the uptime really. And we never saw a DPS check until like E4 that we really needed to pay more attention to our damage. So predatory avarice, I don't know if you guys remember, but this was a mechanic that was a normal. It was dictated by the red stacking thing, where you would just stack with everyone. But now they've changed it a bit to where it is, you know, a group stack plus 2 big knockback AoE things going out, which is the same way it's handled earlier with, you know, 1 tank, 1 DPS getting the knockback. I think it is always a healer getting the stack mechanic. But basically we just looked for the head. We know that BC is not safe, so we stack across from that at 4. So now we're either going to go to D or A. We have Spoken Cataract, so this is true. We're going to go to D as a group. And from here, all we did was send the DPS who has the knockback to the back corner. The tank was kind of off to the side. You can see where Apollo is up here on the mini map, kind of spread out, forming a triangle with the rest of the group, but to make sure we avoid hitting each other. And this is absolutely awful for DPS uptime, or melee uptime, but it worked, so we dealt with it. So here we have another dissociation, which is going to be handled basically the same way that we handled this mechanic in normal. you have a dead zone on B to C here, so we're gonna step into 2, group up real tight, drop all our pools together, and we basically just told our group, hold W. These pools pop very quickly. They're not quite as slow as normal. Hold W, run through, spread out for your AoE, which I don't believe was in normal. And then we're gonna take the tank buster flare thing away from the party. The group's gonna stack up probably on D here and take the tank buster frontal thing away from the flare. I thought this was relatively easy mechanic to handle. We had a lot of practice doing this when we were speed running this fight in normal, and yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that mechanic. So the next mechanic, and really the last real mechanic of the fight that we're going to see, is the channeling overflow, the emerald weapon mechanic, whatever you want to call it, in combination with the tank buster coherence thing, which is the tank flare tether thing and the line stack AoE that the party has to soak. Again, we're stacked across from the bad spot, and we're gonna resolve this very similar to how we resolve the last set of channeling overflow, where if you start with the low debuff timer, like the 12 or 13 timer, whatever it is, you're gonna just resolve your mechanic like normal. Stand on the far edges of the squares, get pushed together, normal stuff. However, the difference is that we had the people with the high debuff timer stand kind of in that back corner, which you can see up here, so that they don't get hit by anything, but they're pre-positioning themselves for that flare that's about to go off near 2 or C area-ish. So this is terrible for uptime, obviously. I'm sure we're going to find a better way to deal with this, but again, progression, mindset, don't care about uptime until you're missing DPS checks. So deal with coherence at the same time as the push. We get pushed together. We're running to get in a line so the tank can soak the line AoE. The flare is going out at the top of the screen. Here comes the line AoE. Now the people who had the low debuff timer are going to step to the back of this platform, same platform as the other group, and the 20-second timer people are going to just resolve this mechanic the exact same way that we just resolved it the first time. I heard a lot of people were like LB3ing, tank LB3ing this mechanic. So I mean, I guess there's a lot of damage going out here, but hopefully this helps you if you're just trying to progress this, you're not trying to parse this, you're not trying to speed run this. Hopefully this helps you deal with some of that damage, because it is a lot, but I don't think a tank LB3 is necessarily needed in this situation. Then we have another dissociation, I guess, with the sewage eruption. So, dead side from the head, that's going to be going from B to C. Not always B to C, but you have to notice that. And you want to stack in the unsafe zone for these sewage eruption mechanics, so that you can drop your pools as a group and just kind of run around. I don't actually know if anything happens after this. I don't really remember this far. But yeah. So, we're going to have another ominous bubbling going out here. And the shockwave. So that'll be the stack with the arms. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, he's just repeating mechanics at this point, and it's relatively easy, and I think this was a good fight. I enjoyed this as a second boss. It was pretty intimidating at first, just because like there was the debate with the head frontal line thing going on, and then we had to deal with like the emerald weapon stuff going on. Yeah, I think it was a good fight. I'm interested to see how Party Finder handles it. I don't think it should be too bad. I know my initial impressions were not of that consensus, but see how it turns out. P4S. So yeah, I know that there are very mixed feelings on this fight. I'll first say that from a progression standpoint, I think this fight was really cool. I think that this fight was Fun to prog. I enjoyed it. I'm checking my gear, I guess, because I like not hitting anything. Make sure it's not broken. But yeah, I enjoyed this fight. This was a bit different. The experimental fire plume, you know, is the same limit cut mechanic that we saw in normal, but for the fireball, the snapshot was on like every person rather than just like in the middle. So that was different. And then the right left cleave was like immediately after, so much faster already out of the gate as compared to normal. And that was a pretty common theme in this fight. This was just like mechanic after mechanic after mechanic. It was very quick, very fast paced. The tempo was, you're always doing something in this fight, always like one step forward. And I think that it was, again, I think it was a really fun fight to prog. So I want to go back here. I want to go back here and talk about the darkened fire mechanic, because I've seen a couple strategies where you do like 1, 2, 3, 4 around the outside, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 are in the middle, and 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of go in and out. People are like rotating in and out of the middle to soak these fires. I don't think that that is necessary at all. I think it's over complicating this mechanic. Basically all we did here was we put numbers. Yes, I was pretty pissed about it too. We put numbers on the cardinal positions and which is fine, but we put the circle letter markers on the inner cardinals on the squares. The way we resolved this mechanic was we had 1, 2, 3, 4 literally going to their number cardinal position, and then you would just subtract 4 from your number if you were 5 or more. So 5 would go to 1, or 5 would go with 1, 6 would go with 2, 7 would go with 3, 8 would go with 4. So we called this the quick math mechanic because none of us knew how to add or subtract apparently, and we wiped this a couple times. But I mean, the damage here is not high. Like, we have maybe 10% shields here on the whole group, and you can see as these are going out, like, it's not, this does not hit hard at all. So I do not see a need to rotate people in and out. It's just unnecessary movement. You know, appreciate your casters and healers. Let them just sit there and turret and not have to move much. And then we all collapse south of the boss to let the tether stack and let it be really easy for the tanks to deal with that mechanic. If your group is struggling with, you know, killing these like dark fire ad things, the way we were basically handling it was, once you pop the ad to your left, aka the ad clockwise of you, you are in charge of killing that ad. And then this was kind of like a not said thing in our group, but we were doing this anyway, I feel like, was, you know, once you kill the ad clockwise of you, you can just kind of keep rotating clockwise and killing the next ad in the line, or just basically just help finish off the rest of the things. But these died pretty quickly, and we didn't really have much issue with it. But yeah, then after the tank buster, there's like another raid wide, which the raid wides in this fight actually hit pretty hard. I don't know if it was just like our item level or what, but like that it's a pretty solid raid wide going on there. So this is the cross mechanic. I think a lot of groups are kind of solving this the same way, but we just kind of had a set direction we were going to pull the boss. If it was limit cut and the first limit cut was on A, we would pull it into A. If the first limit cut was on B, we would pull it into B. Keep things consistent. You know what to look out for. You know where the boss is going to go. If it was the AoE circle, we were just always going to go to B. I don't know why we picked B, but that's just what worked for us. So we're baiting. We bait the AoE circle here. We disengage. We stack up far against the wall here to bait the puddle so that we don't get trapped. And then we're just going to step forward here, or I guess to the side, because we had a early movement going on there. And then dodge the left wing slice that he's going to do. I thought that was cool. Again, very keeping with the theme of this fight, very quick, fast paced. The tempo is like always going in this fight. Very interesting and fun to prog, in my opinion. This part here, we just had everyone except the tanks go to the center because we're gonna have to bait another experimental fire plume thing anyway. So everyone go to the center, group up tight for the tanks to be able to take the tethers more easily. And that's how we resolve that mechanic. Help your tanks. I know that the tethered buster things in this tier are not friendly. They're not fun to deal with as a tank, so whatever you can do to help your tanks out, I feel should be done. This intermission mechanic, we had just split into our light parties. Tank healer, DPS, DPS. There's a caveat to that, which I'll get to here in a little bit, but that's just how we resolved it. So outer fireheads means it's a line. Arya and I are partners. We always just stacked on this bottom line of the square, so we were number 3 from boss relative. We would always stack on the bottom line of the square, resolve our soak mechanic together. So this is where I feel like the fight really started picking up, because all the other mechanics we had really seen in normal and kind of predicted happen in normal. We very quickly saw, with the dark fire and normal, we're like, hey, you can hit 2 of these with 1 AoE circle. So that was kind of an assumption we had already made going into this fight, was there's gonna be a situation where we have to stack 1 person on top of 2 fires and resolve it that way. So a lot of these connections we were able to make really quickly. But the ad phase, I feel like, was very much up in the air, and we noticed that relatively quickly. So we had pre-assigned groups, like we always do. We kept our healers in the middle for healing. But me and our red mage Azza were on the north ads with Leon, and our other DPS and tanks were on the south ads starting, and we would just rotate clockwise and kill them on the cardinals. So we have the little number or the little letter things on the nameplates that we'd call K. Okay, we're killing K, we're killing K, we're killing K. That one's dead. Rotate clockwise. This ad's already at half health. I'm starting to cast a Madare, and I think thankfully cancel it, because I probably would have deleted that ad. So you have to be really careful. This is going to be kind of scary in Party Finder, especially when we get more gear and we get best in slot and people are wanting to parse and stuff, and they're just going to be deleting the ad. I can already see how terrible this is going to be for parsing. But you kill your ads on the cardinal positions, because they're going to be spawning the big ads. Step into the middle for healing, because there's going to be a big raid wide that happens here. And we step back out, start DPSing the ads again. And I don't actually know how other groups are handling this mechanic. We solved this very quickly. I think within like 2 pulls we learned how to do this. But the ideology was basically, if you are tethered to a bird, that's the first thing you're looking for. If you're tethered to a bird, you're going opposite of your bird. If you're tethered to a player, you're going opposite of that player. If you're tethered to a bird and a player, you're going opposite of the bird. So, I mean, it's the same thought process all the way through. The biggest thing is, if you're tethered to a player, you need to pay attention to where their tether's going. So in this situation, I am tethered to Apollo, right? And I'm only tethered to a player. So I need to watch and see where his other tether is going, because if he's like hitting an extra global or greeting something, or maybe he's even like late to getting to his spot, you don't want to be in the wrong spot. So whenever I'm in this situation where I'm tethered to a player, I look at who I'm tethered to and then where they are tethered to. So I see that he's tethered to 3 or the 3 ad. I run over to the 3 ad, and then we just kind of fan out off the ad because they do like a little dash line thing. And then as you can keep hitting them, and as they start dashing, you just start kind of sidestepping a little bit, so that they don't leave you while they're leaving. You don't want to get hit while you're leaving. So relatively easy. And then here, all I'm looking for, oops, sorry for hitting the mic. Here, all I'm looking for is what ad has Leon targeted, because that's the ad that I'm gonna go hit. And Ozza and I, again, our light parties are calling in Discord like, okay, we're hitting M, we're hitting Mike, so because Mike is low here, so we're killing M on a Cardinal. Mike's dead, we're rotating over to O, we're gonna kill O on a Cardinal. So, and the whole time here we're holding 2 minutes because pot's coming up in 20 seconds. We don't need to juice the ads. The DPS check isn't that tight on the ads, and it's better to just hold it, in my opinion. So stack in the middle, first AoE again, followed by a long cast, really big AoE. And then we do like a couple globals, we pop our pots, and we start doing our 2-minute burst here. I like how this lines up, although I am skeptical of what's going to happen with the ad phase in like speed and parsing. So nothing but good stuff for Prog so far. Like in a Prog setting, this has been really cool so far. So after the raid wide, we do the same thing. You know, we stack up together. We know a tether tank buster thing's about to go out. Stack together, make it easy for well, we're making it really hard in this VOD, but the ideology was to stack together and make it easy for the tanks to tank the tank buster and deal with it just like we did earlier. Fledgling flight, you know, the tooth looking eyeball things, find it away, really easy. Same thing from like E10S, not difficult. Drop them, step in, dodge the cone, nothing too terrible. So experimental glory plume, this is where I was talking about like the light party asterisk thing from earlier in this fight. So we didn't actually realize until like way later in our prog on this fight that the stack mechanic was always baited on one tank and one healer. So we thought the light parties were just normal light parties, you know, tank healer, 2 DPS, split them, do the soak. But we got like lucky during our prog in the sense that that was actually, the normal light party stuff was actually working for a while. And, you know, we would lose like 1 or 2 people sometimes, but we would just kind of chalk it up to them like eating mechanic or being low health or whatever. And we didn't really think much about it until the conflag phase where you have that like stack mechanic, and they were like, we're doing something wrong here. Like our stacks are wrong, or something is wrong here. And we had asked one of our friends who was a bit further ahead in prog from us, you know, what's going on with these stacks? Like, is this a light party, or is this, you know, DPS and support? Like, what is happening here? And they were like, oh, this is 2 tanks, 2 DPS in one stack, 2 heals, 2 DPS on the other stack. It's like, that makes a lot more sense. That would have saved us a lot more pain if we would have realized that earlier. So I don't know if you knew that or not. Probably everyone knew that. We did not. And we were just chugging along with our normal light parties and dealing with it. But at this point in the video, for our kill video, I mean, you can see we had figured it out. We had our 2 tanks, 2 DPS with our healers, and 2 DPS on the other side. But that was one little hiccup that we really did not understand, and honestly couldn't understand going into this fight. So Fountain of Fire, this was the first like real puzzle mechanic of the tier. I feel like we got a couple pulls on it. We didn't really know what was going on. We were just kind of like having people stand and stuff, and you know, we saw like some of the phoenixes. We had people like pull them to try to like break the tether, or like put the phoenix into the fire puddle. We started playing around with a couple things, And then Leah, one of our ninths, was like, hey, I'm gonna go talk with one of our other ninths about this, and because I think I have an idea. Like, okay, we're just gonna keep pulling, seeing what the hell is going on. They come back with this idea of like how to bait the purple things, how to deal with it, and we're like, okay, let's try it. So this was kind of what we ended up coming up with, in the sense of we're splitting into our light parties, actual light parties, not the weird thing. We're splitting to our actual light parties. So one group is going to cover one half of the arena. You can see the fire puddle spawning on north. So our light party, me, Leon, Ozza, and Arya, had north and east. The other light party had south and west. So Arya is going to take the north puddle, while the ranged, the fizz range and the caster are going to deal with baiting the purple phoenixes first. Then the melee will bait them after they go out, and then the tanks. So again, I don't know how other people are handling this mechanic, but this was kind of what our ninth came up with, and it worked out really great. So bait the puddle or bait the phoenix, wait for the other phoenixes to go off, take it across, don't get hit by the other phoenix, keep doing DPS. And it ended up being a bit more trivial than what it seemed like at first, because we were pretty scared. This shielding is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's hilarious, but that buff that the healers get from soaking all those fire puddles is just insane. Another tank buster here. We got pretty lucky. We were supposed to be stacked on 2. Sorry, tanks, for making your life horrible. And then this is conflag, is what we were calling this, basically because of E6S with the tornado bait stuff. There's a lot of damage going out right there. I think there's just a lot of damage going out in general in this fight. But again, we're in our like tank DPS and healer DPS light parties here. Resolving the mechanics together. There's the stack. We're gonna have another little line dodging cone thing going on here. I think I actually end up getting hit because I greed a Madare that I should not have greeted. Yeah. And then we had like a set bait of how we wanted to do this. So thanks for taking the buster south. I was kind of doing like just north of west, I think. Yeah, let me look at that. Yeah, I was looking at the menu. Yeah, I was like just north of west. You could see Jackal is kind of putting theirs just east of north, while we had, I think, Fizz range. So Noya baiting the north tornado kind of into the wall. Healer, I think Will's baiting into the wall for like the southwest or southeast, and then Ozar caster is also baiting into the wall. So we were basically pointing the south tornadoes south, the north tornado just kind of into like the northwest, away from Jackal, because they're the closest one, even though it probably wouldn't have even hit. And yeah, I think that we figured this out very quickly. Our knights came up with the strat for this very quickly, and it was relatively easy to resolve. Yeah, so this twister mechanic where you go away from the dark tether, there's definitely a better way to solve this. We did this for the sake of Prog. Go far away from the dark tether, stack, bait the puddle, step forward, stop, bait the puddle, step forward, stop, bait the puddle. And then I don't know if other people were doing this, but basically the DPS tank group was looking at the tornado, going to the left of the tornado. So I would be going on the upper side here. Healer DPS group going to the lower side here. But I was just like standing on this little square, to get knocked into the dynamo tornado. I don't know if that's what other people were doing, but it was intuitive, it was easy to see, and with all these like red mechanics on the red platform with the orange, and that was like a very easy identifier on the platform for me to look at. Like I said, there's probably easier ways to resolve that mechanic, but for the sake of Prog, right? That's what we do. And then Des told the last mechanic that we really had to deal with, the last real new mechanic that we had to deal with. The only thing about this was it was a bit confusing. I remember wiping the group one time because my brain just went on like autopilot of, you know, point the arrow away from the group, when in reality we're supposed to be pointing these into the group because we have to get hit by whatever, how many our number debuff is. And yeah, I think this is a cool mechanic, relatively easy. But again, we could probably handle this a bit more optimally, but all good. Also, if you did not know this, Macrocosmos on this mechanic is absolutely broken if you have an Astrologian. I don't think we actually used it here, but these hits doing the 9999999 damage just insta heal your whole party to full with macro. So the more you know, abuse the shit out of that because it is insanely broken. Yeah, that AoE hits hard, so macro just makes it easier to get top there. Then you can start shielding and dealing with the next experimental glory plume, which is the same mechanic we saw earlier. There's a fire AoE with a stack, so the tank light party thing, tank healer light party things going on. Intermission, same thing from earlier. You know, we got our designated spread spots, designated stack spots. Nothing really too difficult going on there. And then just kill the boss. I think there's one more like cross mechanic that happens before. Yeah, here comes the cross mechanic, and same thing. Experimental fire plume. Stand in the middle. Make sure you can bait the circle. Okay, we baited the circle. We're going to the B just like we do in phase 1. Keeping everything consistent. Making sure that we don't have to think too much and bait the pulls on the edge, step forward, dodge the cleave, and kill the boss. It was cool. Overall, like I said, this fight was really fun to prog. We figured this fight out very quickly. I feel like the problem is we were not executing it well at all. I think a lot of us were tired. I think a lot of us had not really like gotten much sleep the night before, and we woke up early, started raiding, but that's all just excuses and things you learn from, right? So now we know better for next time. Okay, P4 P1 or P4-1 or whatever we want to end up calling this fight, because it's going to get confusing. I actually really enjoyed this. It was hard. The DPS check was tight. You had to execute mechanics. You couldn't take damage downs. You couldn't let people die. For a like week 1 fight, I really enjoyed this, even with how toxic some of the like the lightning mechanic and stuff are. Big fan. We saw a lot of these mechanics in normal, minus like the Bloodrake stuff, which I'll talk to about in a second. But I really enjoyed this fight. It was high octane, fast pace, really cool fight, and honestly relatively simple. It was more or less just being able to execute it well and also do damage. So the first mechanic, Bloodrake, we had ended up solving relatively quickly, and I don't think it was too complicated, but we wanted to make this strat as like brain dead as possible so that we didn't really have to think too much about it. So I'll kind of explain what we were doing here and what our thought process was behind this. So the DPS are getting hit by Bloodrake here. We called this Bloodrake because we were delusional and tired and on like 4 hours of sleep in the past 2 or 3 days. So the tanks are going to be taking the tethers first here. I think we have a... Oh, I thought there was a raid right here. Maybe I'm trolling. I guess there's not. But then we're gonna have another Bloodrake, which is going on tanks and healers. So the DPS will be taking the virus. So basically what that means is the tanks and healers are going to be stacking close to the boss to take the tethers. And they don't care about the virus, so they can stack. So you can see our A marker up there. You can see where we have the boss positioned. You can already see our tanks and healers pre-positioning to do this. So the tanks and healers are going to stack up tight because they don't care if they have the virus or not. They do not need the virus. The DPS need the virus. All the tanks healers need are the tethers. So they're stacked up close and tight so they can get the tethers really easily. The DPS kind of fan out, which we do a bad job of. I am omega guilty. I ran straight into Ozza here. Thankfully he sidesteps. So does Jackal. Roll call goes out, aka the virus is what I was always calling it. And now it's always 2 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 healer. So the tank and healer group is stacked up. They have all the viruses grouped up together, so it makes it easy for us to just rotate DPS in and out of picking up that debuff. So you'll see Jackal first steps forward, grabs the debuff. Ozza steps forward, grabs the debuff. Now all the DPS have the virus debuff. We can all stack north and stack really tightly to make the tether grabbing easy for the tanks and healers, which you'll see us come up here to A at max melee range. Auto snaps all the tethers to the tanks and healers. They go to the same spot that they always go to and fan out. And I think the way that we handle this mechanic is just so clean. I love the strategy we used for this. It makes it extremely brain dead. And yeah, hopefully something similar is adapted in Party Finder because I really enjoy it. So then we have setting the scene, which is the same kind of thing that we saw in normal at the end part of the fight where we have the 4 elements. Biggest thing that you're looking out for here is it's always going to be either water knockback or lightning first. Then it will be one of the other 2 adjacent elements. So in this situation we have water first, then fire, which means we're going to get pushed away from those 2 squares, so we're getting pushed south. Then we will be doing our light party stacks. So water goes out, we get pushed back. We just had all our melee gap close and soak that together, and then the other range group takes it in the back. Immediately after, it's going to do lightning. This one's pretty quick. I died a couple times not realizing how fast it's going to go out, because you also at the same time have to pay attention to, okay, he's doing northerly shift here. His cape is glowing. Okay, now I have to get out. And then the lightning's like immediately going out here. So disengage. I always arm's length this if it's a cape, because the cape knocks you like ridiculously far. Comes over and we resolve the mechanic. And then immediately after that, the poison puddle will drop off. So we already kind of had like relative positions where we're always in around the boss, spread out, and don't stand in the element that's going off, which was another thing that was different from normal. I'm pretty certain you could stand in, like if there was a poison mechanic going out in normal, you could stand in that. You know, if the water was going out in normal, you could stand in that, but you can't do that in Savage. So that was also something we kind of had to adjust to as well. Another Bloodrake, so lightning's going to be safe for the resolution of the orb mechanic. For this, all we really had was, you split the boss kind of from northwest to southeast. That's going to be like the DPS half. From north to southeast is going to be the tank and healer side of the boss. The tank healer side can just kind of sit where they always do. The DPS are going to be looking for what debuff they get. So debuffs are about to go out here in a second. Vengeful baloney. Yeah, so here I get the healer debuff, which means I am going to go to the west. So we always had our healer debuffs go west and northwest. Our tank debuffs for the DPS were always going southwest and south. So you'll see us, rotate into those positions. You have plenty of time to move here, hit positionals as a melee, do whatever you really need to do. Just keep in mind this Bloodrake is about to go out. We always step in for the soil here. And then we back up a bit into max melee range to bait our orbs. So you'll see, so I always look over, I don't know why I do this, but I always look over to see who I'm partnered with. I know I'm partnered with Ozza. I know they're a caster. So I'm going to just kind of sit max melee range, let them pop the orb for me, soak it together. Don't really have to worry about it. Orb snap, we pull through. We always hit the cardinal orb first. We rotate one position clockwise, hit the next orb. We know that lightning is going to be safe, so we're all stacked in lightning, and we resolve the mechanic. I thought this was pretty cool. I liked the whole having to remember what happened earlier in the fight with him not tethering lightning from the Bloodrake, indicating that lightning was going to be safe later. I thought that was pretty cool. So baloney coils, this is handled quite a bit different than what we did in normal, and we kind of resolved it the same way that we did in the first part of the fight with the first Bloodrake, which I'll get to in a second. But with regards to actually resolving the mechanic itself, how we dealt with it was we stacked everyone kind of between A and the very front of the boss as a group, and if it was DPS DPS towers, the tanks healers would step forward, DPS would step back to A at max melee range. Once all the tethers snapped to the front group, the group soaking towers would spread out and go around to soak their towers, and then the tether people would just kind of go through the middle to their respective predetermined cardinals that we kind of already sorted out. So you'll see here, DPS towers, the DPS will step back, the tanks healers will step forward. The tethers go out, we fan out to our tower position, and then you'll see the tank healers go through to their spots to bait the AoEs and resolve the mechanic. I thought that we did this very well. I love the way we handled this. It kept things consistent to how we were handling, the tethers for the first Bloodrake. And we kept going forward with that, right? So the DPS are soaking towers, which is the equivalent of getting a Bloodrake, right? Which means the tanks healers will be getting the tether in the later mechanic. And then, the next tower mechanic goes out here in a second. Here's the next baloney coils. So we have DPS again. So DPS are again the equivalent of getting the Bloodrake in the first Bloodrake mechanic. So the tanks will be doing everything. Tanks are getting the tethers and they're getting the debuff. So we resolve this the same exact way. We're gonna stack our DPS all to the north here, because we don't care if we have the debuff. We don't care if we have the tether. So we're getting far away from the boss, make it easier to get the tether, stack together so that we can pass the roll call virus debuff easier. Tanks and healers are kind of loose spreading around the boss, in front of the boss here. They're gonna start rotating in one at a time. Will takes the debuff. Here comes Apollo, he's gonna take the debuff. Now, all the tanks and healers have the debuffs. Now they can just stack just north or just in front of the boss. The tethers will bait to them really easily. They can pick them up really easily. There's no running around in circle shenanigans. And they resolve the mechanic literally the exact same way we resolve the very first set of Bloodrake mechanics. And I really enjoy the strategy we came up with here. At this tank buster, we're kind of hoping to have LB3 by the time this resolves. I think we were a little bit behind engage here because we would normally LB3 right here. But we're a bit behind on gauge, so we hold it until the very end. And then you're gonna have another Pinax, right? You do this the exact same way that you do the other Pinax. Okay, so we have lightning. So we have lightning here first with poison, disengage. Keep in mind where your party is going to be. We did most things boss relative. So I was always going to the right. Leon was always going through. Same thing every single time. Consistency. And then we're gonna have the water. into a northerly shift. So we're going to A. Let's see if it's glowing. His sword is glowing, so he's going to be doing a cone. So I always, for the water and the cone, I always just let the water push me back and put me where I need to be. For the sake of Prog, because it just makes it so much easier. And I'm curious if you could greet another global if you like arm's length that. But anyways, oh, mechanic, remember we have to do light parties. Fire's about to go off. Rotate Will to the middle. We keep Arya on the outside. Arya's got a 2 marker on their head. Light party stacks, soak, and then at this point, it's just burn the boss and top 2 minutes and go. This is a pretty tight DPS check, at least it was for us. We hit Enrage a few times, and I think most of it was just, you know, losing one person or having someone take a damage down. But in the end, I feel like we nailed this fight pretty well, and I mean we pumped pretty hard, even with the paladin. I enjoyed this fight. It was a great fight. Again, fast paced, just like we saw on P4S. Fast paced, a lot of mechanics going on. These were a lot more simple and easy, but they required a lot of good execution and a lot of the party to just do damage. Okay, last one. So P4-2, P4S P2, whatever we want to call this, Hesperos 2 fight. This was interesting. I don't know why this fight reminds me so much of Phase 4 of Alexander and T. I guess it's because there's a lot of like theatrical mechanics that look very intimidating and very excessive, but they're not, like, in reality, they're not too hard to deal with. So, I mean, it's hard for me to not laugh looking at this next mechanic, because there were a lot of memes in our voice comms going on here with Act 1. But like, this is a perfect example of like a mechanic that looks really intimidating, but it's super easy. Like, I kept forgetting to soak my tower, which is where Oz is standing right now. I kept forgetting to soak my tower because like okay, east-west is safe here. I'm going from east-west, or I guess I'm going from east to south. I would always forget to soak my tower. And we were like super tired, super sleep deprived, and I don't know what ended up happening. I started calling this thing like a skewer, and then it dissolved into like me like saying smoking towers or smoking meats to soak the tower, and then like grilling burgers or something with the fire. It was bad. We needed sleep really bad. It was hilarious. I'll see if I can get you all a compilation of that. I gotta pick up the skewer to smoke my meat. Look, it's a little skewer, dude. You see a little spatula that you gotta go pick up over there? Look, I'm picking it up.
Tower?
I picked up the spatula. Now the fire is gonna happen to grill the burgers. Look at that, bang.
Thanks for far.
Far sight.
Well, I'm leaving the static. Affected today.
Anyways, that mechanic was really easy. I just kept forgetting to soak the tower because it was like so brain dead. So hopefully there's not too much difficulty resolving that. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was actually the tank buster in this fight. So where is it? Yeah, so it's either near sight or far sight. I actually love how this mechanic works, or this tank buster works. It kind of makes the party more aware that a tank buster is actually going out. Like, as a DPS player, for the most part, you don't really care if a tank buster is going out. Like, you're always behind the boss, or you're not healing the tank, so you don't care what their health is. I don't have Feint on my hotbars. That's a joke, but again, you get my point. So this mechanic that you're not really involved with the tank buster, but you know what's going on because you have to position yourself properly. I think is pretty interesting. So far sight, you know, the tanks are gonna go out far. The group's gonna come in tight to make sure they don't bait the tank buster. Really cool mechanic. I really like this tank buster. And then you go into Act 2, which was extremely intimidating, but our Knights came up with an amazing strategy very quickly for this, and I feel like we executed this very well. For uptime, it was not great, our strategy, but for progression, it was fine, and it did what we needed it to do. Basically, we always had winds going south and west, fires were going north and east. I don't really know what the tanks and healers are doing, if I'm being quite honest, because I didn't need to know what they were doing, but I digress. Basically, they're popping the tethers there, doing a raid wide. Me and my fire partner are going to the north because north-south is safe first, because those towers are going to pop. And then we are splitting to pop our tether while we rotate to our respective positions on the east-west safe side. And we're also going to soak with our little groups that we have. Yeah, and then there's the raid wide. So I think Act 2 was pretty cool. I think this mechanic's pretty cool. I'm excited to make like uptime strategies for this. And see what we can do to better optimize that mechanic, because obviously like I'm like MP championing over here right now, like just MP. And I mean, you can even see like there's a safe spot right in here that you can greed this mechanic, and you could probably like come across and hit the boss and go out. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do to optimize this mechanic, but again, playing safe for Prog, doing what we need to do to kill the boss. We had the damage, we just needed everyone to be alive. So 2-minute window comes up right after this. That was actually pretty nice. I'm glad that is where we ended up dumping. And then Act 3 I think was actually pretty cool. You know, they brought back the shakers and combined it with like the tower knockback jump leap thing going on. This was a cool mechanic in terms of like how it was resolved. Basically we just did HTMR. Yeah, we did HTMR for the towers, and then we kind of tried to keep that same positioning for the shakers. So like I would run straight through to bait my shaker straight through, and we'd have tank, melee, range, you know, keeping things consistent. Tank, melee, range, then we just shift to our towers, tank, melee, range, keeping things consistent, not trying to overcomplicate things. I could have gap closed there, greeted more globals. But yeah, that was a pretty cool fight. And then another tank buster near sight. Tanks go in, party gets away, tank buster. Love that mechanic. And let's see what's going on with Act 4. So yeah, Act 4 was pretty interesting as well. I think we can definitely do this better. I don't really know if we were doing this correctly or not. I mean, we weren't dying, but basically we were just like looking at whether you have a blue or a purple. If you have a blue, then you're going like directly across from what you're tethered to and just rotating like one position clockwise. And if you have a purple, you're looking at your tower and just moving one tower clockwise. So in this case, I have a blue. I am going one. So B is directly across from my tower. So I'm going to go one tower clockwise and soak that tower after this AoE goes off. Soak my tower, smoke my meats. And then we group up north. We were always just grouping up north and popping the far side tether. I think that the timing of how long it takes for some of these tethers to pop is kind of annoying, and it's the same theme throughout basically the whole fight. You know, same thing in P2 Act 2 and Act 4. Yeah, like if you come in too early, it like re-snaps on. It's kind of finicky. It's a little annoying, but I mean, it at least looks cool, I guess. So it was different. I'll give it that. It was different. And then Act 5, aka whatever finale, we were just calling it Act 5 or finale. I actually kind of liked this mechanic a lot. You get tethered to one spike with 4 people or 3 other people. You spread out. We just kept our melee close, sent the range to the back. You're counting numbers here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this is 5. So, and basically, I'm just like repeating my number in my head the whole time, right? I'm like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and now I'm looking for the tether. Okay, there's 1, bam, and I'm just saying in my head like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So don't forget my tower. Don't forget to smoke my meats. God, that's such a bad meme. Yeah, I thought this mechanic was. I think we did this in like 2 pulls. I think we figured this out in like 2 pulls. It was really easy. And I think it was pretty cool. And then we get to see Act 6, which is the last, like, I mean, this is basically Enrage right here, curtain call. This was, if I'm being honest, a bit underwhelming. I'm sure the healers would disagree with that because there's a lot of damage going out here, but like as like a mechanic resolution, I thought this was, I just think all of P2 is really easy. Like there was nothing that was too over the top, too difficult. It was just, you got this mechanic, be in this spot at this time, dodge, the Hades cones, make sure you're in the middle of the cone so you don't get cleave because they're wider than they look. Normal stuff. But basically we just had whatever DPS had 10 seconds left on their debuff would pop, and whatever support that had 10 seconds left on their debuff would wait for their DPS pair to pop. So like at this point, me and another support player, tank or healer, would have our debuff at the same time. Mine gets to 10 seconds. I go out of the party, pop my tether, and then my tank healer supporting role. So in this situation was Gwill. They wait for my tether to pop, then they go pop theirs. We are standing close to the boss to be in the soil, get heals. And that's the whole Act 6, right? Like it's very simple. It's just a lot of damage going out, a lot of healing to keep up with, and kill the boss. I think P2, P4 P2, whatever you want to call it, it's cool. It's just once you figure it out, it's not, there's not too much going on. And yeah, big raid wide, a lot of damage, and I'm just happy that we were able to clear it. So if I had to absolutely rank these fights on a scale of 1 to 10, starting from P1S through P4 P1S I would say is probably, honestly, it's probably like a 9 for me. I know that I said it's easy and there's not much going on, but like I feel like first bosses should be easy. I feel like they should be target dummies. I feel like they should be those fights where you just, if you want to go in and do a couple mechanics and just smash buttons, like that's the fight that it should be in. I like P1S, cool fight. Excited to see what it's like in a speed and parse setting. P2S in a Prog rating, I would probably give it like a 8. I'm not a big fan yet of the like emerald weapon water push thing going on there. You have to be pretty far away from your partner to not get killed by the push together, and I think that's going to be kind of annoying to deal with, especially for optimization. Other mechanics in that fight, such as like the debate frontal thing, I think, were like a cool variant from the normal mode. And then like the little downtime that you have with the triangle and square strategy is a bit annoying, but overall the fight was cool. I enjoyed it. If I'm being quite honest, I'll need to wait until like re-clears of next week to really figure out what my thoughts are on P1 and P2, because we did them very quickly and I don't really remember them too much. P3S in a prog setting, I think was like almost a 10. I know that's a hot take. I know people hate that fight, but from a prog perspective, again, I have no idea how this fight's going to be in speeds or parsing or re-clears or whatever, but from a progression standpoint, progression ideology, I think that P3S was very fun to prog. I think if we had a bit more energy, we weren't as tired, we could have done better, but I mean, those are just excuses and things that we could have avoided. But again, like, great fight, very fast paced. You're always thinking about what the next thing's going to be. There's never a downtime where you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs, not really thinking about anything. Awesome fight to prog. 9.5 or even 10, to be honest. P4S. Someone please tell me what to call these fights. P4-1 was pretty awesome. I really liked how tight the DPS check was. I really liked how punishing the mechanics felt. Because you lose one person, you take a damage down, you're probably hitting in rage. At least that's how it was for our group. And yeah, it was fun. I like tight DPS check fights. It makes me have to pay more attention to like every single global that I'm using, and yeah, there's nothing much more to say about it. I think I give it like a 9 out of 10. Really cool fight. Excited to see what happens in Savage. Excited to see how the randomness of elements impacts speed and parse runs, specifically speed runs, because there are probably going to be some weird strategies around each set of mechanics, but we'll see. And then P4-2, P4-2, again, very theatrical. I'm pretty disappointed that there wasn't like a new song for that phase. This is the same song from the first phase. So that kind of takes a point down, but from a prog standpoint, really cool, really pretty visuals. I'm actually very happy that it was easier than P1 in my opinion. P4 P1 in my opinion. Mainly because, you know, it's a door boss, you have to get there in the first place. You know, you don't want to waste all of your lockout even trying to get there. So yeah, it was cool. The mechanics felt rewarding to do. Once you figured them out, you know, it was relatively easy, but I mean, it was still a very interesting fight to progress and a very interesting set of mechanics to deal with. And it called upon, you know, a lot of older fights and a lot of their mechanics, but it was an interesting fight, and I'm excited to optimize it. So if you've cleared these Savage raids, I would love to hear your opinion on each of the fights, even if you're not all the way through the whole tier yet. I streamed all of our prog on Twitch, although I don't have any of our comms on there. All of the skills should be highlighted on my Twitch channel or uploaded to my YouTube channel. So if you want to go watch all those through, feel free to go ahead. I'll have a playlist link in the description of this video. Hopefully this wasn't too long. I am looking at my OBS recording right now and kind of screaming at how much I'm going to have to cut this up because it is way too long. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my commentary and thoughts about the raid tier, and I hope that if there were any explanations of mechanics that you were struggling with, I hope I was able to elaborate on them a bit more for you and help show you what we were doing. If you are stuck on a mechanic and you want to reach out to me and get an idea, feel free to let me know in the comments or reach out to me on Twitter. I'm going to be making videos more frequently now that the Savage tier is finally over. So please look forward to that, and I hope to see you back next time. Thanks.